Hey guys, this is Jacob. I'm the character artist for Archetype Studios. Thanks for sticking around. I'm going to show you some cool art stuff here today. Um, so let's just go ahead and get started. All right, so I'm just gonna show you basically some things that I've already worked on. But I'm going to walk you through the steps of how uh, how I and the team function in a pipeline. And the way that we usually start is always with pen and paper, pencil and paper, digital. Whether it's on in Photoshop or in a sketchbook, we always start with concepts first. And sometimes those concepts, uh, are just in the forefront of our minds, but we have to sort of come up with like a mood board or some sort of inspiration, right? So something that I like to do before I start a character is just sort of use, there's different platforms out there for artists to use, so that they can sort of post their work, get inspired, and you know get a lot of reference points before they start their own work. So just here's like a few drawings, 3D models, a lot of just sculpts in ZBrush that I found inspiring. We're going for a stylized look with a lot of our characters, as I'm sure you've seen. So these are just a few that I have accumulated and just sort of put together an image file. Now, we met with Justin earlier. He's our concept artist, and I'm going to be showing you our medium female today. So this was the original sketch provided to us by our concept artist. Whenever we're in this stage, there are a lot of iterations to these sketches. We don't just come up with a single one and then we shoot it across the forums and everyone green lights it and says, "Hey, great, let's go." There's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of meetings. Usually, each one of these armor pieces is dissected, and we try to figure out what the purpose could be for each piece. With female characters, especially, it can get a little tricky, especially when it comes down to functionality of armor, based on whether it would work as armor and also sort of complement the female form. You don't want to go too crazy in either direction. You want the character to clearly be female, but you also want her to be protected. There's a lot of games out there that it just doesn't make sense sometimes whenever they're wearing bikini armor, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense in a battle. This is our medium. So she's a little bit less feminine than something like a light might be. She's a little bit more of a bruiser, I guess, but still, I think that she's got good form. I especially like the waist area that leads into the hips and thighs. And as you can see, there's different iterations of those thigh plates, and the knees. You'll spot some differences if you pay close attention to these concepts here. But ultimately, this is pretty much the final design that we went for to continue working on. And as we develop the character, different pieces are still discussed thoroughly, and we can tell whether or not they're going to work in 3D or not. So I will sort of take artistic liberties every now and then whenever I see something that might not be working, and I will bring it up to our other art guys in our meeting and just sort of discuss it, and if it's approved, then we'll move forward with it. I'll sort of show you the next stage. So the drawing that you just saw was constructed by Justin, our concept artist, but what he likes to do is he likes to create these pieces in 3D. So they're very rough and rudimentary, and you can see all of his different shapes that he's created here. What he'll do is he'll angle his camera in such a way that he can take a screen print or a screen cap of it and take it into Photoshop, and whoops, and he will draw over it. This is a great way for the concept artist to understand how these forms look in perspective, if they make sense in 3D. So yeah, so it really helps me and him, because one, he can understand how the forms look in 3D, but two, whenever he's done, he can send these things off to me. He can send me all these 3D files, and I can sort of start my shapes. I'm not going to use any of these pieces for the final form, but I will use them as reference points. So I'm not just going to start from scratch. I will take all these pieces in 3D and bring them into my programs, whether it be 3ds Max or ZBrush. Now, something that you'll notice here is that his base mesh is pretty high poly. This is fine. He probably built this in ZBrush, but as far as like a base mesh goes, it doesn't do me a lot of good whenever I'm creating art with ZBrush. So to start with a better base mesh, I will take it into 3ds Max and create something that looks a little bit more like this. So this has a little bit better of edge flow. It's not great. We're not going to use this for the final animations. Edges and vertices are these boxes, basically. Whenever there's good edge loops around joints, things animate better, and it's just easier to model overall. So if I wanted to select, you know, this edge ring right here, it just makes things a lot easier to, you know, connect and create things in sort of a symmetrical way. I'm sure that, you know, if you guys have been watching Santeri at all in any of his streams, you guys are probably experts by now at 3D modeling. So yeah, so now that I have the base mesh, what I will do is I will take Justin's model and the base mesh into ZBrush. So I'm gonna just scroll through the comments here because I've been sort of on a roll here and haven't really taken a look at any of these. It looks like Santeri's here answering questions for you guys, so that's cool. All right. So anyway, yeah. So here's the base mesh. Here's what Justin has built, and I'm ready to go. So again, these forms are really basic. If I were to start sculpting on them, they're so low that I'm not going to be able to build much detail on here. As you can see, the polygons don't allow for a lot of sculpting. So what I need to do is subdivide so that I can have as much detail as you see here on all these boxes. So the base mesh that I've created, I have subdivided so that you can see all these boxes are a lot smaller. And what that allows me to do is sort of create finer detail. So you can see here that I'm able to draw a lot more detail than I am on these big blocky pieces, right? So I will separate those pieces. Or another thing that I can do is, yeah, don't get crazy, guys. Don't get too excited. So what I can do here is there's a thing called Dynamesh that ZBrush has, and this is a godsend to artists. Without going into too much detail, it basically allows you to add definition while extruding. You can extrude pieces. Let me just give you an example so that you can understand. It used to be that ZBrush, whenever you would extrude a detail like this, the polys would get really stretched like that. Do you see how they're getting stretched? And then you'd have to divide the subdivisions, and all of your polys would still be stretched. And it makes it really difficult whenever you're going to add detail to something like that, and all the polygons are stretched. What Dynamesh allows you to do is do the same thing, but it's got to project here for a second. I'm running like 9 different programs right now, so it's going to be a little bit slow, so you'll just have to kind of hang with me. So it's done projecting, and what you can see now is that Dynamesh has preserved all my polygons. So now I can start sculpting detail, and there's no stretching, and no problem. Now, before, artists sort of had to deal with all the stretching polygons, and they'd have to be really smart about how they constructed their meshes whenever they had to combine things like this. But Dynamesh has really allowed people to just be super free with how they're modeling. So now what you can see is that whenever I Dynameshed, all of my meshes combined down here. So now you can see that even the plates that were like really thick and heavy before are now combined with the body mesh, with all the other armor pieces. They used to be their own separate pieces, but now they're completely combined. And that's a great way to start blocking out your model, which is what I've done in this next layer here. So once I Dynameshed and combined all of my layers, I just start going in with different brushes and building up layers. So naturally I can go in and start defining these shapes. And this is just a great way to basically take it a little step further for what Justin did. It's understanding how the shapes are going to look in 3D. It's adding a little bit more definition to them so that I can understand what's going to work and what isn't going to work. And I can start picturing how the character is going to move, and if it's going to make sense for the arm to move on this axis, move forward on this axis. Is there going to be a hinge here? Does it have to be moved down? Does it have to be shrunk? What about the jetpacks? What about the straps down here? Are the legs going to be able to move with these satchels here? So these are all the things that I'm thinking about in this stage that I might not have thought about when everything was sort of blocked out, and I can just start making sense of a lot more of the pieces. I think the cod piece was one thing that we've discussed at length, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and I think that that's still probably a talking point before I enter the next stage. But for now, it looks something like this. So the next stage is the head, and everyone, I hope you're sitting down because I'm going to unhide the head here, and this is what I currently have. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Let me hide some things. Oh God, it's terrible. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna delete this. Yes. Okay. So as you can see, this is not gonna work. This is terrifying. Yeah. This is like dark web stuff. Okay. But anyway, we're not going for realism here, and that is that's obviously not real. But what I do know is that we are going to have exaggerated features on these characters, especially for their faces. So something that I've done just to sort of better understand what the character could look like is, again, I've gone back to my references. I'm looking at different things that work and don't work. I have a little bit of a background in 2D art, so I can take something that Justin has done and sort of elaborate on it once again. So what I'm creating here is a model sheet. This is just a drawing I've done to sort of lay out how I think the head could look. And I've also done a side view of it. So as you can see, there's more of like a curved nose and bigger eyes, just more pronounced features than in your average head. And all I've done here is just take a lump of clay basically and just started moving those pieces around. And I'd say for about 75% of the development process for something like a head is going to look pretty scary. So all I can really do is sort of work through this and have you guys trust me that that it will turn out a little bit better than this. Now, whenever I'm designing a head, it's sort of hit or miss. A lot of times I will rework something. I will have a full clipboard, a full a full history of work in my ZBrush file, and it will just I'll just hate it, you know, and I'll have to start from the drawing board again. And that's just sort of how these things go, because anatomy is a very, very tricky thing. You have to really be adamant about what you're doing, where certain features lie. So let's just get right into it. I'm going to import my textures. So ZBrush allows me to I'm going to focus here for a second. Yeah, so what I'm doing now is I'm bringing in these reference images, and I'm going to start just matching up points. So right now my head is close, but not close enough. Yeah, it's a little bit off. And again, I was just sort of eyeballing it, so.
Hey Jacob, we have a pledge for 175 from Optimistic 56K.
Nice. Optimistic 56K. Thank you very much for your pledge of $175. That's awesome. We are clapping and cheering for you here in Seattle. I appreciate it. I hope that's on the account of the scary doll face that I just created in ZBrush. You can confirm or deny that. Yeah, so thank you guys. I don't know if you're all on the East Coast or the West Coast or where you're watching it from, or if you're not even in the United States. I appreciate you tuning in here tonight. It's really not that late where I am right now, but it feels late because we've just been plugging away at this all day. I haven't done as much as bugs and stealth, but still, the energy here is very strong. So I matched up the side, right? For the most part, it's not perfect, but it's pretty close. But whenever I look at the front again, it just still doesn't help a whole lot. So again, I've got to take these pieces aside. I'm going to use the front now. And right now, guys, I'm using the eyeballs as sort of like a reference point of where I know that they'll end up, and I'm going to have to build the eyelids around them. But right now, yeah, it's just kind of scary. I don't even know why I'm choosing to show you guys this step, because it just looks kind of bad. But one thing that's important when building model sheets is making sure that all the features line up. It's one thing to just guess and say that the model sheet looks about right. But one thing you'll notice that I have these guidelines here in Photoshop, and that's just to make sure that the tip of the nose, the edges of the lips, bottom of the lower lip, the center of the eyelids, um, the outer seam of the eyelids, the top of the eyebrows, the bottom of the eyebrows, top of the head, bottom of the chin. All those things are lining up with this model. So whenever I'm overlaying, I'm making sure that those points match up so that whenever I'm coming back into ZBrush, I make sure that they're consistent. Oop, I'm getting like a, there we go. My computer is chugging right now. It's not used to this much attention with streaming, ZBrush, and all these programs open. I've got a fairly decent computer, but it's sort of a potato, I guess. It's like one of those like potatoes that like they hook up to like a battery, or that you make a battery. It's sort of like that. It's like a little bit better than a run-of-the-mill computer. I apologize if I'm quiet. I'm terrible at doing art while I'm talking, so I'm really trying to focus right now on just getting all these points. I'm going to start smoothing some of these areas over. So one thing that you'll notice is my cheeks are way too low. It just looks like kind of like baby face right now. I need to start looking for certain planes of the face. There's a plane right here. There's also a plane that leads down the side of the face like this. There's a plane right here. Plane on the nose. So there we go. So ZBrush is as fun as it looks too. I recommend if anyone is interested in doing this kind of work to give it a try. It's a lot of fun. It's great for artists. Whenever I was first learning 3D, they taught us programs like 3ds Max and Maya, and that's great and all, but I was not very technical when I first started this. I'm still not, actually. There's a lot of times I'm very stumped by technical things that people just look at me like, how do you not know that? And it's because I'm an artist at heart, and computers were the enemy whenever I first started all this. I wanted to be a 2D animator. I was very inspired by Disney films, things like that. I've always loved gaming, but I never pictured getting into game art. It's just something that happened organically. But here I am, and I'm using a bunch of programs that I pretty much only know how to use the programs and not really know how they work. I just want them to work. I'm like your mom whenever the car starts breaking down and she doesn't know what's wrong with it, but she's just angry that it's not working. Why is the car making that sound? I don't know. I don't know anything about cars either. Anyway, you can see it's starting to look a little bit better, but she doesn't have eyelids yet. So whenever I hold down Control and click on the outside of my model, that's when Dynamesh is going to take its that's when it's going to retop, like I mentioned earlier. So as I was pulling and extruding a lot of these verts, you know, I was starting to lose a little bit of density, a little bit of my polyflow. So as you can see right now, my resolution got a little bit lost, which is fine right now since I'm still in early stages. But if I wanted to increase my resolution, I would just move this little slider here. and that gives me a little bit better of a result. So who hasn't donated yet today? If you haven't donated yet, what are you doing? There's a Kickstarter button. It's like a big green K underneath this video. If you just take a second and go to our page, you can donate for to Midair. If you're just joining us, well, these guys are probably filling you in on all the details in case you don't know. But yeah, we're just a small team of indie developers who just do this in our free time, and we're just passionately slaving away trying to make this game that we all believe in. So please take the time and, you know, donate a little bit, donate a lot, whatever you think you can give. If you can't give anything, post to your networks, post to your social networks, post to your friends if you think that they might be interested. Yeah, just help out our little team trying to make our dreams come true. Oh God, what's going on with her forehead? Okay, so right now I'm tweaking a lot of things, but it just still looks really creepy to me, and I think it's because of the eyes. I think I can't let this go on any longer. Got to do something about these crazy eyes. So one thing I can do, I could start sculpting the eyelids in the same way that I've been doing everything else. Sometimes I'm just in the mood to do this. I'll just sort of start going like this, building up the form, dynameshing. In fact, maybe that's what I'll do. There's a lot of different ways to do this. But the problem with that is you lose a little bit of control. You're not getting it perfectly around the form, and I think I'm going to just show you the other way that I do this. So I'm going to duplicate my eyes. So now, make sure I'm not in perspective mode. So now there's 4 eyes there. And what I can do is start slicing away pieces of this. So I'm going to use this option here. And you'll see what I'm doing here in a second. I'm going to sort of use the shape of the eye to form the eyelids. So now I've got a much cleaner shape, and now I can start playing with that shape. And just to eliminate the creepiness even further, well, maybe that makes it worse. Start doing something like that. Now the head shape is still pretty alien looking, I guess, but that's all part of the process. I mean, it's just learning to look past that and knowing that eventually things will start shaping up. Whoops, what is this? Oh. Yeah, I'm going to ignore that. Okay.
another pledge. We got a $35 pledge from Adrian.
Nice. Adrian, thank you for your $35 pledge. That's awesome. Again, we are clapping and cheering for you here in Seattle. Appreciate it. Yeah, the $35 pledge. What's the name of that one again?
That's the Beta Backer.
Beta Backer. That's a popular one. It's a bargain. Yeah, I think you're getting a lot for that one. I can't remember. I don't have all the stats in front of me right now, but
yeah, so he's unlocking the progression pass. He's unlocking the closed beta access. Those are two of the biggest things. He's got some gold crates, an art book, etc. I don't know if you guys can hear me on the stream, but he's getting a lot of stuff.
He's getting a lot of stuff. I don't know if you can hear bugs or not, but it's good choice. Good choice. Oh, there's a question. Jacob, how long did it take you to get comfortable in 3D art, and was it a really frustrating process? Yes, it was a very frustrating process, actually. As I mentioned before, I started learning 3D in a program called 3ds Max. Whenever I opened it up, I, being an artist who only ever, looked at stuff on, I would just draw on my sketchbook. That's what I thought art was. Whenever I first started seeing movies like Shrek and even like Toy Story, I thought it was really cool to look at, but I never really considered them art. I just didn't really know any better, I guess, but I thought the computer was doing all the work. So whenever I first started getting into 3D, or being forced into 3D because I went to college for media arts and animation and it was like a required course, I resisted it. I didn't like it. I didn't want to learn it. I was just really negative towards it, and I did terribly at it. I almost failed out of one of my first 3D classes, and I didn't care. I ended up like asking the professor to sort of pass me at the end of the quarter because I had like done so poorly. It was like a D minus. In fact, I remember one of my projects being in front of the class and the other students laughing at me because it was so bad. And at that time I was just like, whatever, I don't care. I'm going to be a 2D artist. I'm going to work at Disney. I'm going to be a cell animator. All this 3D crap is garbage. I don't need it. But then I sort of experienced a revelation. It was just sort of realizing that, I think it was around the time that The Princess and the Frog came out, I went to this animation festival, and there were a lot of different TV networks there, like Cartoon Network, Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, places like that, and I got to speak to a lot of the people that are in charge of running like the TV shows. They're the ones that you pitch to whenever you have an idea for a TV show. And a lot of them were actually just saying that they were moving out of the 2D world, that they were gearing more towards, live action stuff, reality shows. I don't think that any of those, I don't remember like seeing if Cartoon Network actually went that route, but Cartoon Network was there, and I remember thinking, really, you're Cartoon Network, and you're gonna, they sold out like, the Disney, or like the Discovery Channel, or, the History Channel, that they were going to go to live action, they were going to go to reality TV, and I was just blown away by that at the time. And it sort of made me reconsider what I wanted to do, because I didn't want to struggle in a job market that was going to be non-existent after I graduated. So I started taking 3D a little bit more seriously, and rather than, I'm having a hard time rotating this stupid eyelid, rather than just sort of blow it off and not consider it to be art, I thought I would give it a chance, and I turned out to really like it. And I didn't just like it after a while. It turned into my only form of art. In fact, my 2D has really suffered over the years because I hardly touch my sketchbook anymore. I don't really draw a lot more anymore. I don't do like figure drawing. Usually if I want to create some form of art, I go into ZBrush or something and start making stuff, because it sort of allows me more freedom. as an artist. I can I can create forms in 3D that I understand better than I do in 2D sometimes, especially with anatomy. It's one thing to understand how anatomy works, but it's a whole other thing to try to draw it. Understanding how those shapes are formed in perspective, um, how the anatomy should look when it's, foreshortened. Um, it's kind of tricky, but in 3D, I can understand those shapes and I can create them with a camera that's rotating around it, so I know that it's right. So I think I just answered a question like for the past like 20 minutes. I don't know if that answered your question, but it took me a while to realize that I wanted to be a 3D artist and that I wanted to be a good 3D artist, that I wanted to be the best 3D artist that I could be. And just like anything else, there was no trick to it. There was no like secret formula. I just had to work hard and try to just be better than people that that I was competing with. And now that I'm in this industry, I see that it is very competitive, especially starting out. There's a lot of artists out there who want to be character artists because that's like the cool and sexy thing to do in the game industry, and they have a hard time because they're sort of in this bell curve where they're not terrible but they're not amazing, and they sort of get lost in the shuffle because their work looks so similar to everyone else's. So most of these artists, they want to create things that they enjoy. So you get to see a lot of portfolios that are flooded with orcs, elves, dragons, things like that. And honestly, like I said before, I played games when I was growing up. I was a gamer, and I enjoyed things like that. But I wasn't like super hardcore with it. And actually, the things that I enjoyed a lot more were studying films, especially like animated films. I was a huge Disney fan, still am, and that's sort of like where my style comes from. I just really enjoy those big doughy-eyed characters and bright colors. It's sort of what drew me to Midair. I mean, it really stood out to me as a unique-looking game compared to most things that I see nowadays. So yeah, these eyelids are just still. That's what happens whenever I'm talking and trying to create stuff at the same time. It suffers. I hope it looks okay to you guys, but it does not look good to me right now. Okay. A lot of times when I'm working, if I'm getting like frustrated with a certain aspect of the design, I will just move on to something else. It's sort of like the fresh eyes approach. It just allows me to look at a different part of the character and sort of analyze it and hone in on that part, and then come back later and hopefully have fresh eyes to look at it, from a new perspective and say, oh, this is obviously the thing that was wrong before, but I couldn't see it because I was just staring at it for too long. Another thing to do is just go to completely different area of the body. Just like I'm gonna go down to the shin, and just start, pinching and pulling different pieces. So her cheeks look pretty puffy right now. Almost looks like she has like she's got something like she's holding air in her cheeks or something. Another thing about this design is that we're trying to create like a strong looking female. We don't want her to be too feminine, but we also want her to be kind of hot too. We don't want like, I don't know. I think even female gamers would agree. It's like you just want her to look good. Being tough doesn't necessarily mean being ugly. Oh, I think I'm seeing the problem actually. So this right here is a problem. This cheek area right here, it should be coming back around like that, right? Because the natural shape of the face has these little creases right here, and those stem from the top of the nostril here, or this like piece coming out of the nostril down like that. So what I can start doing, sort of eliminating some geometry there, flattening the planes of the face here, and I'm starting to see that shape. It's still a little sharp. And now her mouth is like a little derpy. It like looks a little bit too low. So let's get our bearings again. I'm going to anchor back to my concept again, just to see if we got too far away from the original drawing, because sometimes whenever you start playing with shapes and pushing and pulling things, you can sort of forget where you started. So I'm just going to go back, and yeah, you can sort of see that we sort of pushed and pulled our way out of this concept. And it's not necessarily that this concept is like the end-all be-all. It doesn't have to be exactly how this ends up looking, but we do want a guideline here. We want some sort of frame of reference. So yeah, I think this is a matter of opinion how far the eyes go back into the head. I've seen some really deep set eyes that can look pretty cool. So maybe we'll just set them back just a little bit further. And I think what I did here is these eyelids are on the same, these eyelids are on the same subtool. That's sort of my mistake. They should not be there. Whenever they're on the same subtool, it means that I can't move this bottom eyelid and the top eyelid independently unless I sort of separate them somehow. And there's different ways to separate things like this in ZBrush. So right now, since I create that split earlier, you're seeing these two different colors appearing on the bottoms and the tops. So what I can do is try to create the top eyelid and the bottom eyelid to be a different color, so that I can manipulate them separately. So I'm going to just go into my tools here, polygroups, auto groups, group visible, group visible. There we go. Okay, so now the top eyelid and the bottom eyelid are different colors. But whenever I start moving things again, they're still moving together. So one way that I can separate them is to auto mask out my polygroups. And this is a great way of being able to only manipulate one at a time. Now this is great whenever you want to keep something on the same layer. But if I don't even want them to be on the same layer, I will take my separated polygroups that I've created, two different colors for, and I can just group split the groups. So now you'll see that I have two different layers. Here's my top eyelid, here's my bottom eyelid, and I think we'll just go with that. Got to change off this polygroups thing. All right, back to work. Eyelids are just one of those things that it takes a lot of tweaking, I think, to get it right for me. Some people may have a really easy time with it, but for me it's it's always a struggle to make sure that the character doesn't look too sleepy or too, I don't know, whatever, sensual, I guess, is a word for it. Sometimes those like droopy eyes can make her look like she's up to something. Or just like sick or whatever. It's nerve-wracking modeling in front of people. I never really thought about my process until now. It's very interesting. I realized how bad the character looks for a very, very long time until something just clicks, I guess, at the end. I don't know. Maybe I just need more practice. So anyway, yeah, she still looks like really funky to me. Either way, just gonna keep plugging away. Remember how I mentioned before that if something isn't working, I'll just like delete it and start over. This is probably one of those times where I would just, here's every move I've made this whole time I've been talking to you guys. So I've made 469 different moves. So I can take this thing and just go all the way back if I wanted to, back to Creepyville. So there's where she was at the beginning, and here's where she's ended up. And now that I did that, I sort of see that her nose got really long. I don't know how that happened, but I can sort of use what I just did to sort of see what happened there. I'm going to move her lips up a little bit like that. It's all just playing around. ZBrush is very much like that. This program is ZBrush. So I'm going to move on because this is just like not turning out how I wanted it to, I guess. But I will show you what I did come up with in another file. So again, I mean, this stuff is very trial and error. It's knowing that the planes of the face exist, but at the same time, so this is where I sort of landed on the other face. This one was looking a little bit too feminine. Well, not too feminine, but too petite, I guess, for being, you know, such a heavily armored girl. But you know, she has eyebrows, she has eyelids, she's got better ears, better lips, just a better structure to her face. The haircut, I think we axed this haircut. It's a little bit too like soccer mom, like John and Kate +8 kind of look, but I don't know, we may keep it for future stuff. But yeah, her hairline's receding a little bit here. I'm gonna go to another file. So and again, this stuff isn't done in like this short time period either. Usually whenever I'm working on stuff like this, it takes a lot more finesse. I don't just like knock out these pieces in like 20 minutes. So here is sort of what we finally landed on. There's still some pieces that need to be refined a little bit more. So I can go in and start defining some of these pieces a little bit more. cheeks with a little bit too much definition. You can see the light kind of hitting there. What that does is sort of give it like a, it just makes her appear a little bit older. So I'm not sure if that's what we're going for. It just looks like she's got more wear and tear to her. We'll give her a little bit more of a youthful appearance. So that's that's sort of the final face that we're going with. There's still some pieces with the ear that I need to tweak. The hair is not final whatsoever, but as you can see in this file, I started cleaning up the armor a lot more. So how I did that is I will take something like this piece right here, and I'll just start masking things out. And whenever I fully mask these things out, I extract the mesh so that it becomes its own polygroup, similar to what you saw earlier where I changed the color. What that does is it sort of detaches the mesh from the larger mesh. So once again, right now everything is one solid color, but whenever I go down to the polygroups option, I can group the masked area. So now I can isolate this piece, and if I so choose, I can choose to either inflate it so that it creates more of like a shell, and then bring it into another program, or I can just define it like I've done here. And just create a lot cleaner shapes. So let's pretend for a second that I extracted it and exported it to another program. So I'm going to show you right now what that would look like. So here is the high poly version that I just extracted. As you can see, it's got all of its sides to it. It's a complete volume. I'm sorry, I'm reading the comments here. Yeah, so what I would do here is take the defined mesh that I've created in ZBrush and then start modeling over top of it. And this is just basic box modeling in 3ds Max. I can just sort of start building shapes so that I have a much cleaner look to it. And then if I want to add even more definition, it'll look something like that. And then I bring that mesh back into ZBrush and just continue working that way. So I'll do that right now. I'll show you an even cleaner version. One thing that that we like to do whenever I'm creating characters like this is I try to pick a theme or a shape that that fits the character. So this one was very square shaped. The medium female is the sort of the middle ground, right? So you have the heavy and you have the light. The medium female is got to be in between. She can't be, you know, too big and bulky, but she also can't be too small and petite. So whenever we were going through the different alterations to her design, as you could probably tell from the earlier design, her face was a little bit too sleek, a little bit too girlish. So we really started squaring off the jaw, squaring off the ears, the nose, the mouth. Even the eyebrows sort of have like a boxed off look to them. And her theme overall is pretty boxy. She still has that feminine waist and sort of like the larger hips, but overall, she's a pretty tough looking girl. So that was intentional. Um, we're very much going for that look. The hair is sort of inconsequential. Whether it's a ponytail or whatever design we go with, uh, there's going to just be a lot of interchanging hair for a character like this that we'll be able to choose from. So this is just sort of slapped in there for now, because we know that it's not going to be necessarily final to this design, but it just sort of gives us a point of interest, I guess, so that she's not just completely bald. Yeah, so I'm gonna open up a different file. I think, which one am I in right now? Yeah, I think this is the next one. Okay, so here's yet another iteration. Now I've really started cleaning up all these different shapes. Each piece is generally chopped out. They're no longer connected to the body. Each one is its own piece. Even done defining the face a little bit more, I think. I think the only thing that was left on this is maybe the fabric. There aren't as many folds. You don't see the straps. The hands are still completely unfinished. But overall, I mean, I was getting towards the end of this character at this point. But yeah, so the way that we construct these characters are in different pieces. We try to make sure that the area around the torso is able to be disconnected from area like the legs, the arms, and the head. So we're going to aim for having different selection sets so that you can pick and choose which chest area you like better, which forearms and armor pieces around the gloves you like better, and same with the legs. So we try not to have a lot of intersecting pieces. One, for animation, and two, just so that that we can sort of interchange all these different pieces like that. So yeah, we try to keep that in mind when designing these, and a lot of times our concept artist knows that whenever going into these designs. But as an artist, it can be easy to forget and start moving pieces into certain areas that you don't want them. Opening up yet another file. So I think this is pretty much towards the final. So I was finishing up the hands, just like little details like the straps here, the bottoms of the boots, different buttons, and as you get closer to the actual model, you can see a greater attention to detail was put in a lot of the small details and a lot of the other areas on the armor pieces. There's going to be a lot of other steps that I'll take whenever I enter the texturing phase, but for now I would take this and probably start on retopologizing, which is essentially breaking down all these really dense polygons. So those are sort of where we started, if you can remember. Now towards the end, whenever we have a lot of defined pieces, but then we'll have to go in and again apply those very low poly meshes again so that performance is better in the actual game. But you can transfer all this high detail onto something called a normal map, which is a way to create nooks and crannies in the way that light bounces off of areas that don't necessarily form volume, so that it appears to have a lot more detail than it actually does. So one thing that we like to do, especially for our menus, is sort of retain the detail from the high poly to transfer for a beauty shot. to use inside of our loadout menus. So what I've started doing in this next file is posing the character, just to sort of give her a sense of weight. It gives her a little bit more life, and I will take this shot or this pose and render it out. This also helps, I guess, for seeing how it'll look in, when it's animating, because looking at it in a T pose, which is how you just saw her with her arms sticking out, that's very much for a reason. We do that so that the rigger, which is the person who basically constructs the skeleton inside of the body so that she will be able to animate, it creates a very symmetrical pose that is neutral, that they can put the bones through the finger joints, to the elbows, the knees, the hips, the spine, all those different places. It just makes everything a lot easier, and you can animate the character a little bit better that way. But since we're not at that step yet and we need a beauty shot, I was able to go into ZBrush here and pose her. And the way that you pose things, and let's see, so right now all the pieces are separated, but I can sort of show you with one piece here anyway how posing works. Even though this is super dense, it's gonna break, but I can essentially give you an idea of what I'm doing here and why I'm able to pose it. So use your imagination here, kids, because this is gonna look really ugly, but it's gonna require a lot more steps to sort of show me, or to allow me to show you how it's gonna work. But that's basically what I'm doing. I mask off the entire area, and then her fingers all jacked up. That's not good. That looks painful. But anyway, yeah, I take all these separate pieces and create a skeleton using joints and masks, and I will pose the character however I see fit. It's not just like a button you push and she poses. So yeah, that's essentially how that stage is performed. So then I will export this entire mesh and bring it into an awesome little program called Marmoset Toolbag. And this is essentially it's like a little pocket-sized game engine made specifically for rendering beauty shots and portfolio shots. So here's the medium female with pretty lighting, AO, all the things that make characters look cool. There's a question: do you guys know if you are going to release server software so we can host servers ourselves? Currently we don't have plans to do that, but we are working with partners to give us a better selection of servers, so that we can rent them for Midair. But I think that's probably a question better suited for someone like yeah.
I can yell into your microphone.
Yeah.
So yeah, we currently aren't going to allow people to host their own servers on their own boxes, but we're working with partners to make lots of different types of selections and regions and different infrastructures available. So more info as we get closer to release on that.
If you heard any of that, put a bunch of like smiley faces or something in the chat. So anyway, yeah, sorry. Oh, okay. Davey, I thought you were saying to look behind me, but you're talking to someone else. I was like, like, what is he? Is he like? I thought he was gonna be like standing like right behind me. I was gonna freak out. All right. Anyway, so yeah, this is the final render. I think that this image was actually featured in the trailer for a brief second. Let's see if I can pull up one of the. Oh, here's this. This is good. This is some of the progress, I guess. This is so what I'll do is I will post progress shots in our art forum. Stuff like this will get posted after a day or two or a week or whatever progress that we've made that week, and I'll sort of ask for feedback. Our artists know that something like this isn't final. It's again, it's a rough stage, and I would basically post this and say, hey guys, what do you like about it? What do you hate about it? Is there anything that I should change? Is there anything I should just completely get rid of? And one of the things that I should completely get rid of in this stage was the haircut. That was, again, rough, but it just did not look right. It's a female character, but the haircut just does not do her justice. No matter especially with the way that she is shaped. It's already, she's not super feminine, so a haircut that just looks like that is just going to make things worse. So that's when I sort of changed the haircut, provided more screenshots, different angles of the face, to see what people liked, what they didn't like. Here you can see the differences between. Let's see. Did we get another pledge? Greg. 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 Thank you, sir. Thank you for your pledge of $35. Appreciate it. We're all clapping and cheering for you. This is awesome. Thank you all. I'm sorry if I'm not personally getting to all your questions. I think this is my first stream on here, so I hope you guys will forgive me. But I think that Void Spawn and looks like Davey's in there too, answering questions for you guys. So yeah, hopefully I'm doing a good enough job here. So anyway, the face shape here, you can see I provided different iterations. One is a little bit sleeker, but we actually ultimately went with this design. It's just a stronger jaw, a lot more squared off face. So something like this is actually more towards what we're going for, again, intentionally. So these are more iterations of the same design, work in progress stuff, obviously, but yeah. So there's the final form with the squared off jaw again. Final lighting, final everything. This was just me having fun a little bit. I don't know if anything like this will ever get used, but it was fun to just make it look cool and pretty. So the next stage that I would enter is creating all those squares, the polygons, the low poly mesh, which I haven't started yet actually for the medium female, but I do have some files here of, let's see if I can pull up some of the heavy stuff, because he is finished. I'm going to go into another program now. I use a lot of different programs to create this stuff, and it's more of a preference at this point. I can probably do the same thing using either ZBrush or 3ds Max. But some programs just sort of lend themselves better to what I do at a different stage of the process. So I'm going to pull something up for you guys. Just a second. Whoops, just lost everything. Bear with me, people. Sorry. All right. So currently, what I'm working on right now, and this is simply because we wanted to get the character into the game as quickly as possible, we sort of skipped this process, which um, whenever whenever we modeled the head, we just sort of created a very high poly version of it and threw it in the game. So that's currently what's in the game right now. So what I'm doing now is retopologizing it so that it can look better for animations. So if there's any blink animations or just simple things that give it more character, right now what we have cannot move whatsoever because he's just a bunch of thrown together polygons. So right now this is a much more efficient way of doing it. And this program allows me to go in and draw these squares however I see fit. And it also allows me to, I mean, it's not always so tedious. Sometimes I can use something like this. And it'll do a fairly good job. It's not perfect, but, well, that was really bad, actually. It's not usually that bad. But anyway, you get the point. I don't know, it's, wow, that's terrible. Come on, Taco Gun, you're better than that. A little bit better than that, anyway. Alright, anyway, that's a bad example, but, yeah, usually it would, it would pretty much draw that grid how I drew it, and then I could use that for modeling the rest of the character. But what I'm going to show you now is basically everything I showed you with the medium, but through the whole process. So again, here was very early stages of the heavy. Extremely blocky. This was whenever I first joined the team, and I was still sort of feeling my way around the pipeline. I had done things a certain way before I joined, and it worked for me. But I was sort of introduced to some different techniques, especially through Santeri, thank you, of creating hard surface models, which a hard surface model is the armor that has the pinched edges that if you can knock your hand against it and it's hard, that's a hard surface. Organic modeling is more like flesh and fabric, things like that. So hard surface modeling, it's a lot more boxy, it's man-made. Ooh, that's not good. Okay, anyway, I'm back. Yeah, so there's early stages, and I was just working with our designers to sort of block out a lot of these early shapes. The concept art for this was very good, but there were some parts that just didn't make sense necessarily for animation, that looked good in a drawing but wouldn't necessarily make sense in real life. So one of those pieces was the chest plate. I think that before it sort of creased into like the armpit area, just a heavy guy like this, he's going to be really tough to animate as it is without experiencing a lot of collision with the shields. So we sort of tried to start making sense of how the arm and all those pieces could fit together. If you don't mind, I'm going to pull up some of my stuff here that I've lost. Yeah, so again, just more detail shots. Every piece that you're seeing here was used for a purpose. It wasn't just me taking image shots and, I don't know, saving them on my computer for a rainy day. All of these shots were uploaded to our server so that our team from across the world could look at them, evaluate them, comment on them, give thumbs up or thumbs down, and I would move forward or, sort of revert back to other things if we needed to move to another design. So none of this stuff is finalized after its first iteration. We will go weeks and weeks, tweaking things as simple as, the buckles on the straps or the armor on the fingertips until everything is just the way we want it and it's ready to move to the next stage. So again, just more shots of all the different pieces. These were very rough and blocked out, but it was just sort of showing how the function over the form would look. And I'm not sure if this made it into the final design. I think you can tell in the first person shot what actually ended up working. But yeah. So again, more shots. I think I eliminated the square shapes that you see here on the waist. I think those made it back in, but for now we took them out just to see. Boots detail. I had a lot of fun with these boots. I really like the shape and how they turned out. They look like they would function for the most part. I don't know how his foot would necessarily bend, but I think we sort of called this part fabric, so then it's like, oh, okay, I guess his foot could move. But it looks cool, so whatever. Um, yeah, more shots, more shots. This is, again, all for, oh look, there's some notes. I wasn't sure what to do with these shapes. Maybe come up with something cool. I think this was actually a note to our concept artist. I could just tell that these shapes were not working, and sometimes when I'm creating, all these cool different armor pieces, I'm seeing triangles, I'm seeing squares. I want to keep a consistency to all the different shapes, so it doesn't just look like some manufacturer out there building armor. He just makes each individual piece, and they never make sense. It just looks cool. It should have some sort of it should sort of what's the word I'm looking for? It should sort of duplicate itself through the form. Whether they're the same size or not, they should at least retain some sort of relativity to each other. So, yeah. So I think with the final, it looks like. Oh yeah. Okay. So we went with this almost like this overstrap buckle piece that you can sort of guess that things are being loosened or tightened inside of it. But yeah, this is pretty close to the final shot, and this is the stage that we were at with the medium. So this is whenever I was entering sort of the beauty shot realm. He doesn't have a pose here, but this was getting close to the final. So next we entered the let's see, where am I? The retopology stage after this. So there's some more close-ups, some details. Alright, so next we start texturing things. So once we ended the stage of the retopology, which I showed you here, I pretty much just do this for the entire character. I actually think that Santeri was the one to retop this character. I was actually away for a spell and pretty much just needed to get done, and I wasn't around for it, but he's a wizard, so he just sort of took it on and retopped everything for me. I was able to come back into the stages whenever it was time for texturing. So that's what you're seeing here. We do have like we have a very clean look to the game. There's a lot of broad strokes when it comes to color palette and contrast. There's not a lot of gradients or hundreds of different greens and blues and yellows. It's very painterly looking. So I would just use this gradient or this overlay inside of our texturing program, which I use Substance Painter, and start painting like a few scratches on it that would seem like they'd make sense. You don't want to go too crazy with it, or then we start entering a whole other realm of the dirty, gritty, like Call of Duty style first-person shooters where just everything looks like it was run through an industrial, washing machine or something that just like scratched everything up, and it looks like it's like 1,000 years old, even though it might be like brand new issued army gear. Everything is scratched, everything is scuffed up. I just wanted to make it make sense that obviously these corner pieces are rubbing against things on his armor. It might be fairly new armor, but he is getting into battle. There's some rough areas. It's not going to be perfectly clean and pristine. Same thing with his boots. All that gliding and flying through the air and running on the ground. It's gonna kick up some dirt. It's gonna scratch up those knees a little bit. There's the back. Now this yellow was sort of like a high contrast look. I mean, you're not going to see the yellow in the game. It's very Bumblebee looking. It was more so for me to get a very stark contrast so that I could pick up the levels between the scratches and the paint. It's just an overlay though, so if you think of Photoshop, I can just go in and change the color to anything I want. The yellow is sort of, yeah, just a reference point. Here I was playing around with like some sort of racing stripes just to sort of break up the design a little bit. It's just a straight line, but yeah, this is sort of to throw it out there that something, kind of a possibility, I guess. There's more of the traditional red. Changed some of the materials on the back of the jetpack. Gave it like some exhaust wear, some dirt, some a little bit of grime where it would make sense around the engines. And yeah, you can see that the red works as the final color, but whenever actually painting it, the yellow did provide more of a contrast so that I could see what I was doing. But here is the actual, final design. I don't think these are the final colors of the game. I picked a red that was sort of standard. We've got a specific palette that we follow for the game itself, so that all you have to do is sort of plug it into the system. But this isn't it. This is just a bright red that I picked at the time.
Some questions. Rich.
Mm. Sorry guys, I'm missing some questions here. Scuba Snack, what's the most difficult part of the design of the character? That's a good question. As far as like designing the character, it's getting a character that feels familiar, but yet no one's ever seen before, I guess. It's getting a look that doesn't look just like another character in the crowd. You kind of want it to be memorable. Whether you push its features past a certain point or keep them below a certain point, it's really kind of what I was doing earlier, which I don't know why I chose to tackle it in this stream, but it's getting that face just right. It's getting that face to not look so alien or weird. But overall, like we said, keeping themes to the design is very it's a very important aspect. Having like the box theme or the triangle theme, you want all those shapes to sort of resemble each other. You don't want to just start throwing pieces together because they look cool. You don't just give a character a samurai sword and a knight's helmet and a bunch of pieces that don't make sense because you think they look cool. They might look cool in an isolated sense, but when it comes to designing a character, you want it to make sense to that character, so that everything sort of looks right whenever you're looking at them as a whole. So yeah, it's just getting a familiarity to it, and a lot of the subtleties that it takes to do something like that take a lot of practice, take a lot of studying. You have to sort of go back and study a lot of the masters, a lot of character designers from, again, for me, it's Disney. For others, it might be, a particular anime or, a particular movie or, a video game. It's studying great artists, seeing what they did that didn't work, seeing what they did that did work, and trying to apply them as best you can to your design. The small Kiwi asked, Jacob, can you give us an idea of the art workflow? Who's involved with which step, etc.? So after the concepting stage, which is mostly all of Justin's, 2D skill, he's awesome. Those concepts are passed on to me. A lot of times, like I mentioned before, those designs I can take a slight liberty with, depending on how they make sense in 3D. So I will start sculpting. I will just start creating everything that you saw me working on earlier, up until the final stage of the character being fully textured but still in that T-pose. After that, what gives the character life is I pass it on to a technical artist who will then rig it and skin it. Sometimes that technical artist will wear multiple hats. They will animate the character as well as rig it. It sort of just depends on the workflow. Especially in a team like ours, there's a lot of people that wear a lot of different hats. So, for me, for instance, as a character artist on a bigger team at a bigger company, I might only do the sculpting, and then I pass it on to someone who only models, who only does the retopologizing, and then someone else has to do only the texturing. And then maybe even if it's a bigger company, they do all the grunge and texturing stuff, all the nitty gritty detailing of that texture. So the pipeline can honestly get as big or as small as the team desires. But in our situation, there's about like one or two people on each stage of the whole process. So I'm the character artist, and I do pretty much everything in my grasp to do the character art from the beginning to the end. The concept artist's job is to come up with the concept for that character, and he creates all the concepts. Uh, so yeah, I mean, on a small team like this, as a character artist, I do, most of the pull when it comes to creating the characters and getting them into the game. But yeah, then once you pass it on to technical artists and animators, then things, start going down that particular pipeline. But as far as getting the character as a finished sculpt with textures, that's pretty much all me. Yeah, hopefully that answered your question there. So I'm just going to keep moving on here. But yeah, we try to keep a very structured pipeline. As I mentioned before, the way that we work is still sort of. Santeri's doing a great job of building our pipeline and making a clear understanding of how these things should work. And the Heavy was sort of our guinea pig for that. There was a character that existed on this project before I got here. That's the light character. So that's the one that you see in the game a lot. Santeri, I don't know actually who made that character. I don't know, was it you or was there another artist? I won't get into that too much. I don't really know who did that one. But I came onto the project after that character was created, and my first character was the Heavy here. So we were trying to refine our pipeline around that because we started using Substance Painter. We started using this new modeling technique in ZBrush where we sort of build up the hard surface models based on one single sculpt, and we're sort of feeling our way through it. And now that we've got that pipeline in place, we're going to start using that for all the characters after this.
Damn it, Greg, you canceled your pledge. What the hell are you thinking?
Oh, because then you repledged to 60.
Oh, you repledged.
Repledged!
Oh.
Alright.
60!
Thanks, Greg. I'm sorry I got so
Greg, I thought it was something I said there at first. Thank you for... Oh, it looks like... Yeah, you upped it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Tell him that he can up his pledge and change it.
Yeah.
Cancel it. You don't
Hey,
have to scare us.
For people who have already pledged, feel free to up the ante of pledges you've already made, like Greg here. Thank you very much. Okay, yeah. So here we go. Here's the textures of the Heavy. Again, these aren't the official game colors. Again, it was just me playing around. But this is like the actual. I think this is like the only final render I have of him right now. As I mentioned before, all the pieces are constructed in different files. So the torso is actually a different file than the gloves, and the boots and the legs are a different file than the head. So it's sort of hard to get all the pieces together and make a render whenever we're creating it for a pipeline and not just creating it to like make things look good. So this was just sort of me taking a beauty shot in Marmoset. Just adding some glow to the jets and the pockets and stuff like that. But this is what I've come up with. Someone said Mr. Potato Head.
Beautiful.
I think I saw that comic. There's just a close up. The thing about Marmoset is you can get really pretty results. But they're never really going to quite look like this in the game, just because of Marmoset being what it is. It's intended for one sole purpose, and that's to just make really great looking renders. It's still technically a game engine, I guess you could say, but yeah, it's got a lot of other fancy pieces that make it work in a much better way that would never really work as a game engine. So again, more shots of Mr. Heavy, and we're back to the beginning. So that's pretty much all the stages. Other than just getting into, I guess I could show you Substance Painter. I don't really have anything prepared for this part, but I'll just jump right in and see what happens. I'll show you a little bit of the pipeline stuff actually that Centauri's constructed, so that it makes my job easier. It just makes everyone's job easier moving forward. So what I can show you here, yeah, I'll pull up the legs. This is a pretty good example. Yeah, so Santari's mentioning about the light character. It was a rough sculpt that was started by someone who's no longer with us, and he took it from super rough to the in-game textured model. So one step that I think I've taken since then is I created a new head model and a new hair model. Santari, I'm not sure if those are in the game yet or not. Maybe you'd know. I can't really. I'm not sure if they made it in. I think it was similar to the head where it wasn't retopped yet. But getting closer to the Kickstarter, there was other things that were like higher priority than, doing the textures for the medium, or there was some more short-term things that needed to be addressed. That's because of that I haven't focused on. So once we start exiting this stage, I'll get back into creating the art pieces and finalizing a lot of the stages for the medium female. So this is a program called Substance Painter. This is again, it's just another awesome tool for artists in the game industry. It used to be that you would have to go in and build up all your textures in Photoshop in layers using things on the internet such as CG textures, looking for flat base images of metals with no light, no shadows. You would just take a camera and take a picture of a bare piece of metal, no fancy lighting. It would have to be as flat as possible so that you could then wrap that metal texture around your 3D model using Photoshop, and it's just the way it was. I'm not complaining, because that's just until recently it's what everyone's been used to. But now with programs like Substance Painter, Quixel Suite, and there's like a few other parallel programs, but Substance is sort of like dominating the market right now. Everyone's just sort of turning over to it because it's so easy and artist friendly. It doesn't require a lot of technical knowledge. You can just sort of go in and start painting. But what we're looking at here is the final textures for the heavy legs, and I'm going to delete these layers here, show you sort of what the old structure was like. And I'm pretty sloppy when it comes to layers. Whenever I use Photoshop or anything really, I just start like piling things in, and it doesn't always make sense, which isn't good. I know a lot of great artists who are way more organized than I am, and I'm sort of haphazard with it, I guess. But anyway, you go in and start building up these layers here. So there's like a grunge layer and a steel layer. So you'll see all these different layers like disappearing, like around the knees there. The rubber. There's cloth. Not to say that this program does all the work, because it doesn't. There's still a lot of technical know-how when it comes to creating this stuff. But there are a lot of great base textures to start with. If I wanted to add metal to this, let's just give you an example here. I'm going to add metal to like the full character. I just picked a random material here, and what you can see it did is it covered the whole character in this just basic metal, and it's it's fully tileable. Uh, if I show you my UVs here, you can see that it looks clean everywhere. Everything is like perfectly overlapped. You know, there's just not a lot of work. Now, you wouldn't want to just throw this into the game like as is. It would look as good as it looks. It would still look like you didn't put any like TLC into it. So, let's just say I wanted to add like some dirt or some sort of rough grunge to this. Again, I wasn't prepared for this, so I'm just gonna start. But what Substance allows you to do is you can adjust things like roughness and your glossiness, your color, your the height of which you paint. So if I were to paint, some dirt on here, let's just pick like a dirty kind of color. I would select my color. I don't necessarily need height for this. My roughness is based on this image right here. Since it's dirt, it's not going to have a lot of reflectivity. It's not going to have a lot of gloss. Gloss basically just means how smooth something is. So your roughness is going to be pretty high. And let's just start. So if there's something. So this, one thing you'll notice about this, to preserve UV space, just to sort of make the computer, just to sort of save, basically make your textures higher resolution, you save space on your UV map, which is basically where you paint your textures. So if you have more room on this square here, that means your image can be larger, which means that all the detail you paint is higher resolution. And with something like legs, there's two of them, and they don't really need to be, it doesn't matter if they're identical, right? In fact, it's probably better if they are identical. It saves you work, it saves you texture space, and you can preserve a lot more detail that way. So whenever I'm painting on one side, it appears on the other side as well. And that is, so you don't want to get too crazy with the symmetry though, because then it'll be really obvious that everything's perfectly symmetrical. So you kind of want to be subtle with details like this, just sort of spread them out, different areas. Maybe make it so that your eye is never going to be able to see these two marks if you want to get more specific in detail. But anyway, you're sort of seeing the differentiation with the roughness here. So it's just sort of creating like this dirt layer here, where you can imagine dirt would probably settle if this were real. So it's going to end up in these cracks all down here. Doesn't matter how much you clean something like this, you're probably always going to have like a little bit of dirt in the corners of something like these places. So I would mask off all these different areas and create different layers one at a time. You would just see, you're seeing them stack up here. But instead what we've done is created more of a pipeline so that it's easier for one artist to sort of transfer a file to another artist and always have your grunge on one layer, and all these pieces are masked out. So all these individual layers are already pre-made, and I can just pull them from our inventory. So I have character metal. This is going to be consistent across all of our characters. Every time I want a metal, I'll just grab this character metal. I'll grab this character paint. I'll grab this character strap. I never have to worry about the levels of these different gradients. I never have to worry about how shiny the metal is. Is it, you can see, let's see, if I go back up to this one that I had going here, you can see that all these different settings are very unique. And you can tweak them forever. You can up the glossiness of something, and it might not look right, and then you go to your roughness and you're like, I'll make it a little bit shiny, I'll make it a little bit duller, and pretty soon you're losing consistency across the board. Pretty soon your metal on one character is too shiny, and the dirt on the shoes of the other one is like too heavy, and pretty soon your characters, whether you know it or not, it's subtle, but they just look different. You don't know why. It's just like this little thing that it's like, why does that character not look like it belongs in the same world as the others? So creating a pipeline like this is very vital, to just having consistency. It just makes things easier. All I'm basically doing at this point is plugging in values and refining the shapes, making sure they look right. And a lot of these masks do a great job of understanding where these edges are, and it will a lot of times do a really good job of creating those edges on its own. Like it'll know that this is an edge of like 30 degrees, and it'll say, well, that's gonna have some paint worn off on it because of it being a sharper angle. And the normal map information will tell it that. So I think I'm nearing the end of my time here. Let's see. I've pretty much missed most of the chat stuff. I got Davey and Chris here helping me out with any kind of questions that I might have missed. But if you guys have any final questions, ask them now. I'll try to focus on you now more than what's on my screen here, and I can answer any questions you might have about the process, about my experience, about just the characters in general. Maybe like what you'd like to see in the game, suggestions that we're open to. How many people are left here? 50. Oh, nice. Okay, cool. People held on. I didn't scare anybody away. That's good. Yeah, so we are still here tomorrow. This is the last stream of the night, but there's going to be more awesome coverage tomorrow. We got level design actually with Stealth. Davey, he's going to be building more levels with you guys tomorrow. I know on the last one, things got a little out of control. He was like making waterfalls and like concession stands and all kinds of stuff at your guys' request. So I mean, that's always fun. So you guys are like fully interactive with him. I'm sure you'll have a good time. Then 12 to 1, there's going to be a discussion about game modes, probably like a Q&A type situation. And then finally we're going to wrap things up at 1 to 2. This is all Eastern time for just the Kickstarter recap. We're just going to sort of talk about everything that has gone on in the past few days, how awesome everything has been with only being on Kickstarter for like 3 days, and we're already, what's the number? I don't have it pulled up right now, but it's past halfway, which is incredible. So if you haven't donated, I'm looking at you right now. Just go donate right now. You'll see the Kickstarter button underneath this video. Yeah, we're 53,096 guys, and we have 541 backers. So if you liked anything you saw here today, if you liked anything you saw on this channel today, if you just, I don't know, like spending money on Kickstarter things, we're a passionate group of people who love making games. We're doing this all out of the goodness of our own hearts for you guys. So please head over there, donate whatever you can. If you can't, that's fine. If you can't donate $5, guys, it's fine. It's fine. I understand. $5 is a lot of money. I'm just kidding. But go to your Facebooks, go to your Twitter, go to Instagram, wherever you go. Post the link. Tell your friends to back us on Kickstarter if you want to see this game happen. So we can't do it alone. We can't do it unless with just people watching. We've got to all interact with each other and yeah, help us get to this goal. So thank you guys for watching. Thanks for sticking with me. Appreciate it. And yeah, I guess I'm gonna sign off here if I can press the right buttons. Alright guys, Jacob signing off.